Thank you. Thank you very much. And welcome to Sunshine Studios, home of the Barry Bow Show. And welcome to our second almost live show. Last week turned into a disaster when Netflix claimed copyright infringement, and the big tech moguls colluded to ban the show on all of their social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. I want everyone out there in Barry Bow Show land to know that, as an author who creates original material, I honor copyright, and I would never knowingly violate anyone else's copyright. But we're talking about roughly 4 minutes of a YouTube video that has 513,000 likes at my last count. And that video has links that allow you to share it and to add it to your own playlist. I had no idea that it was copyright protected. Anyway, I did some research. And Section 107 of the Copyright Code allows fair use of small portions of copyrighted material, provided you state that it's someone else's property, you do not make a profit or attempt to make a profit from that material, you use it for informative purposes, and you post this disclaimer. I took those steps. So, if you want to see that first episode, you can find it on either one of my two websites. That's barrybow.com and bbcrimepage.com. Go to the menu, click on blog, and look for the post entitled Up Pops the Weasel. With that old business out of the way, here's today's new business. I'm an old man. Been around a long time, done a lot of things. And almost every time I see a post on Facebook or Twitter, it triggers something I can relate to. So I make a comment. And I do that so often. Sometimes I think that people might think I'm making shit up. But trust me, I'm not. For instance, Bill Furman from Philly Press Box Radio and also from Collingdale, well, he plants the seed for tonight's show when he mentioned something to me last week. We have some common interests, communicate from time to time, and he gives me some technical advice. So, he tells me he just watched a show on Netflix. He knows I'm into crime. After all, who out there in Barry Bow Show land doesn't know that I'm America's best crime writer? And Bill thinks I'd really like this show on Netflix. It's called White Boy. So, I check it out that same night. Watch it, like it, watch it again the next day. Watch it a couple more times since then. And I keep saying to myself, how in the fuck could something like this possibly happen? Amazing story. But it did happen. And it's a true story with many of the people, many of the real live people who lived the story are in that show. White Boy himself, his name's Richard Wershe Jr., goes by Rick and becomes known on the street as White Boy Rick, a teenager in Detroit back during the 1980s who, as a 15-year-old, walks into a Mercedes-Benz car dealership, hands the salesman a paper bag containing $62,000 in cash. That's right, 62 big ones in cash. And he drives a brand new Mercedes right off the showroom floor. In this show, we have politicians, cops, FBI agents, newspaper reporters, investigative journalists, the judge herself, drug dealers, and a hitman who's hired to kill White Boy Rick, but his gun jams. And here's one of the kickers to the story. They arrested White Boy Rick at the age of 17 for possession of 8 kilos of cocaine, and the judge sentences him to spend the rest of his life in jail. You heard that right. A judge sentences White Boy Rick, a non-violent 17-year-old boy, to spend the rest of his life in jail for possession of cocaine. Why? Simple. To cover up a ring of corruption. There's tons of money involved in the cocaine business, and tons of money always leads to corruption. In this case, corruption in Detroit politics, from the mayor's office all the way down to the cop on the street, to corruption at all levels of law enforcement, city, state, federal, and judicial. I don't want to be a spoiler and tell you too much, So let's take a look at the Netflix trailer so you can get a taste. And hoping that Netflix doesn't copyright ban me again. Kat, do you have the clip ready to roll? Wait, I can't hear you. Something with the earpiece I'm not wearing. Oh, okay, gotcha now. Good. Kat's my producer. She's a Polish gal, and she's really a big help, moonlighting to help me get started. So I'm going to expand her language knowledge base right now with a phrase from the Lenni Lenape Indian tribe. Chief Halftown used to use this phrase whenever he was ready to start a cartoon on his TV show way back in the day. Now, Kat, this means roll 'em in the Chief's lingo. Easter Sesame!
We're gonna look like businessmen delivering packages.
Money, money, money!
Only us and you will know it's drugs. Okay.
Anybody who's in possession of over 650 grams of cocaine, mandatory life.
White boy Rick. His name is Richard Wershey Jr.
I was like, who was this white kid, that was supposedly running all these black gangs and running the city of Detroit?
When you're 17 years old and you're moving kilos, you're at a status of drug dealer that most 17-year-olds don't reach.
Why would a juvenile, nonviolent drug offender be kept in prison beyond 29 years?
I found out that the reality was much different than the legend.
And I knew that there were corrupt police officers involved in this thing.
Coleman Young is the most powerful politician in the history of Detroit, and his niece was Kathy Volson, and she was married to Johnny Curry, one of the biggest drug dealers in Detroit.
Every police officer down at 1300 was crooked.
If you're a criminal, I would advise you never to get a nickname.
So they said, we got to kill that white boy.
Law enforcement created almost the perfect criminal.
The war on drugs is over, and drugs won.
There's still a lot of angry people in the city of Detroit, in positions of power.
I did way more than he could possibly have done to get that kind of a sentence.
Third world countries don't incarcerate like this.
You're not trying to tell me that you're an angel, that you never did anything wrong, are you?
I've been involved in wrongdoing, but I don't feel I did anything to receive a life sentence.
Thanks, Kat. But Chief Halftown's just one more example of what I'm talking about. Way back during the late 1960s, I'm a member at the Westchester Y. I go there to lift weights, play basketball, play handball. By the way, one of the guys I play handball against plays in the first Super Bowl, Tony DiMedio from up at RBPA and the Westchester State Golden Rams. He starts for the Kansas City Chiefs in the first Super Bowl. Boom. There. I just did it again. Twice. Once with the Chief and once with the Kansas City Chief. Anyway, Chief Halftown's also a regular at the Y back then. He's a swimmer. And we often cross paths in the locker room and have locker room conversations. Nice guy, very down to earth. Now, back to White Boy. The story takes place during the era when coke is king in the U.S., the 1980s. It's available at Netflix. And a very interesting watch. Thanks for the tip, Bill. Appreciate it. Now, White Boy takes us into corruption in law enforcement. So let's spin back to when I first lose all respect for the FBI. That's way back in 1994, when my agent sends me to Houston, Texas, for a potential book movie deal. I'm talking about an FBI undercover sting of the Johnson Space Center. Codename Operation Lightning Strike. Corrupt as hell. And I spent 3 months in a safe house because the FBI wants to kill my client, who's a brilliant, patriotic aerospace engineer. And I'm collateral damage if they find him. This is before cell phones, right after my favorite grandson Zach's born. And I tell the family they won't be hearing from me until I get back home. And I tell them, as long as the feds don't drop a body bag on the doorstep, don't worry about me, I'm okay. But that's all I'm going to say about that experience right now. I'm holding back because I want to dig up some old VCRs of surveillance videos showing FBI agents perpetrating illegal activities. Videos we obtain under discovery because we then spent 3 months in federal court. I want to take the old VCRs to Mike Zimmerman to convert to digital. By the way, Mike's another Collingdale guy, and he does great work. If you need any conversions, get in touch with him. White Boy also mentions actor-comedian Tim Allen, Tool Time guy, getting busted in Detroit during that same time for his illegal cocaine activities. And that triggers me back to my days as a cocaine connection in Philly. Cat, are you ready for this? Me, a cocaine connection. Okay, here goes. During the 1980s, I managed gyms. Although I should really say state-of-the-art fitness centers.
Some people notice a pretty face. Others notice a great body. If you want your body noticed, you've got to stretch, push, pull, twist, and sweat for it. So join Holiday today.
Hurry, join now and get 1985 rates.
Face it, a pretty smile only gets us so far.
Called Holiday Spa, with indoor tracks and swimming pools, whirlpools and saunas and aerobics. Fitness is just starting to peak, and we're the only game in town, so I make tons of money. Remember, this is the 1980s, pushing 40 years ago. Anyway, I'm making $60 to $80 grand a year. That's right, $60,000 to $80,000 for managing a gym back in the 1980s. And that's big bucks. We're located right across the street from City Hall in Philly, in the Clothespin building. And I get an apartment within walking distance on the 23rd floor, just one floor below the penthouse, in what's known as, even today, the Gayborhood. And our hangout is a dive bar, Dirty Frank's. The bar's still there, and we're regulars, 6 nights a week. No alcohol sales on Sundays at PA back then, otherwise it would have been 7 nights a week. Dirty Frank's is very eclectic. I used to say that on any given night, you can run into anyone from Sly Stallone to an axe murderer. No, I never saw Sly there, but I like the way that sounds. And it's a hangout for many of the city's newspaper reporters. Ben Crash from Crash Brothers. And that's where I meet Randall Tex Cobb, heavyweight boxer and Hollywood actor. And former Eagles running back Tom Watershik is a regular night bartender. So it's a great hangout. Now, getting back to Holiday Spa. Our headquarters in Baltimore, Towson, Maryland specifically. And our CEO is an ultimate narcissist. Don't get me wrong, an extraordinary businessman who takes a couple of shoe boxes full of index cards and turns them into a multi-million-dollar operation. But he likes to surround himself with yes men, and he's a narcissist extraordinaire. Here's one example. This one winter he wants to keep a year-round tan, so he buys carotene pills. If the instructions say to take 2 pills, Frank takes 5 or 6. He turns orange, and he spreads Vaseline all over his face so he glows in the dark. Now, all his VPs keep telling him how great his tan looks. Then one day I'm in Baltimore for some business function, and Frank asks me how I like his tan. I look him right in the eye and I say, Frank, you look like a complete asshole. Obviously, he doesn't care for my honesty, and he makes a mental note, which coincides with several other mental notes he compiles about me over the years. Now, I communicate with the same girls in the home office every day, several times a day, for years. I attend parties and barbecues at their homes down in Baltimore. They become my spies in the home office. And they warn me that Frank's going to fire me one day. I take that to heart, and I start banking half my money. 2 years pass. Then I get a phone call on the Friday before Labor Day. One of my spies tells me, Barry, you're getting fired on Tuesday. By then, I'm working at our location at the Cherry Hill Mall. So I go into work on Tuesday morning. My friend's my head instructor. He works for me for a couple of years, fresh out of high school, and eventually becomes a professional wrestler, Hitman Bruno, and later the Boss. And you might recognize him as one of the main characters in the Steve Piasecki crime fiction series. Dead Stripper is the first episode, and he's Steve's sidekick, my friend and pro wrestler Hitman Bruno. People often ask me where I get my ideas for stories. Easy. They come from real people in my life and real adventures in my life. So, my friend's holding a list in one hand. I treat everybody to coffee and bagels every morning. In his other hand is reaching out for the money. But I snatch the list right out of his hand. What are you doing? I'm getting the coffee and bagels today. But that's my job. But today's my last day here, so I'm going. I take the list and head towards Skolnick's Bagel Shop inside the mall. And I run into a VP hiding around the corner. Hey, Harry, how you doing? You're not surprised to see me? Nah, I know Don's coming up from Baltimore. You guys are here to fire me today. How's he take his coffee? So I treat them to coffee and bagels. And Don fires me half an hour later. Now what the fuck am I going to do? No other fitness operations. My skills don't readily transfer anywhere else. Computers are just getting started. No internet. I'll have to find a CEO who's willing to sit down and grant me an interview. I have to convince him that even though I know nothing about his business, I'm a self-starter, a quick learner, and I'll increase his bottom line in no time. But I need at least 50 grand to start. Well, I know that ain't going to happen, and I can't find a job anywhere else that'll cover my expenses. So, I do a market study. I do some risk-reward analysis. And here's what I come up with. I'm going to make $2 million in 2 years, then quit and walk away. And where exactly is this $2 million coming from? Well, this is the 1980s, and just like Detroit, Coke is king in Philly. Coke dealers are making tons of money. So, just like Tim Allen and White Boy Rick, I'm going to sell Coke and make $2 million. Then quit and walk away. That's my reward. So, what's my risk? Just two the way I see it. 1, getting killed. Or 2, going to prison. Between you and me, I'm not concerned about getting killed. I believe I can take care of myself in almost any situation. So I mentioned to one of my best friends, who's also a former work colleague at Holiday. A few days pass. We're in Dirty Frank's one night, and he says, "Are you serious about dealing coke?" Bill, I don't see any other way to make the money I need, so yes, I'm serious. And he says, "I already got you set up. You're going to be the cocaine connection for Club Elon." Club Elon is a private club for Philly's high rollers. It's located inside the Warwick Hotel in Center City. And he tells me he scheduled a dry run for me. I'm supposed to go to Dirty Frank's the next night, bring a gym bag with me, sit at the bar, and set the gym bag on the floor. Someone will come in and sit next to me. He'll be carrying a gym bag, which he'll set on the floor. He'll have a beer, pick up my gym bag, and walk out the door. And that's exactly what happens. Some guy comes in, sits next to me, sets his gym bag on the floor, has a beer, picks up my bag, and leaves. So, now I'm sitting there, and I start contemplating. If anyone's onto this guy for being a drug dealer, they see him enter Frank's with one gym bag and leave with another. That means they know there's some stooge in the bar with the other gym bag, and that other stooge is me. If this were a real drug run, my bag's full of coke. And I can be arrested as soon as I step outside the door. That's just how easy I can go down, and completely outside my control. Suddenly, I see myself arrested, a drug dealer. My picture's on the front page of the newspaper for my mother and my kids to see. And then I go to fucking prison. And that's the one risk that scares the living shit out of me. I want nothing to do with going to prison. Nope. That's how close I was to becoming a cocaine connection and making my $2 million. But it ain't going to happen. I'm not going to jail. So I tell Bill I'm out. So now what do? Simple. I retire and move to the Caribbean. Kat, I'll tell you about that later, after the show. And here's where I almost confess once again. This show is recorded because I still can't figure out all the technology to do it live. And like I said last time, I'd like to have co-hosts and guests and callers and so on and so forth. And I'll keep working on it. And Kat, you did a great job producing tonight's show. Thank you so much. Come on in for a bout. No? How about a shot of your legs? Next time. That's what you said last time. Oh, almost forgot. Philly Press Box Radio is coming up at 7 with Bill Furman and Jim Chetchesko. I didn't get a chance to ask Bill what they're doing tonight, but they always have a good show. Tune in. So, folks, thanks for stopping in. Until next time, see you.